Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Earlier today, I took part in a conference at New York University alongside City Controller Scott Stringer and noted urban expert Professor Richard Florida. The conference was entitled On-Ramps of Opportunity, Building a Creative and Inclusive New York. And before it started, I had the opportunity to sit down for a one-on-one talk with Professor Florida to get his take on ways our city can expand opportunity and continue to grow. Professor Florida, thank you for spending some time with us, and it's very good to see you.
It's good to see you again.
You know, I told you we met over a decade ago, back when we were all trying to sort of figure out what some of your early writing had sort of stimulated a lot of conversation around, which was this notion of a creative class, meaning that scientific and artistic people bring sort of an economic development component to urban life that planners need to be aware of. Has that changed since then?
Well, it's interesting. You know, I've been thinking a lot about this 10 years after the World Trade Center attacks, over, 4 or 5 years since the Great Recession. And what's amazing to me is how resilient New York City has been in bouncing back. And not to mention Sandy. What's happening, and we've been tracking with our group here at NYU in the Creative Cities program, we've been tracking the New York economy in the city as a whole and in its boroughs. And a couple of things are really fascinating. One is that we tend to think of New York as a finance, insurance, and real estate economy, that FIRE acronym. What's really happened is New York City has grown two kinds of jobs even faster than those. The first are the creative jobs, and by that I mean media, design, technology, where the city has boomed, you know, with this influx of venture capital and startups, arts, culture, media, and entertainment. Those have grown at about a 9 to 10% clip since the Great Recession. But the other kind, and those are good jobs, high-paying jobs, $100,000 a year jobs. The other thing that we're going to be talking about here today at NYU is that we've grown a lot of these low-wage, minimum-wage service jobs in retail trade, food preparation, home health care aides. Those have grown even faster and employ even more people. So I think the good news is we have grown our artistic, cultural, creative technology economy, but we haven't created the good family-supporting jobs that were left behind when manufacturing and mid-scale, high-wage job moves out.
But as you've seen, you're based here in the city, and I spent some time here. I know you get around quite a lot, but the least effort to try to sort of bridge that gap, to sort of deliver some benefits, whether it's an increase in the minimum wage or paid sick leave, sets off a huge firestorm of controversy. From your point of view, is that, number one, warranted, and number two, is it a productive conversation?
Well, we've just gone through an economic crisis similar in scale and magnitude to the Great Depression. Now, we didn't go as far down as we did back in my dad's day in Newark, New Jersey, but we went pretty far down. And during the Depression, New York City led in creating middle-class jobs, upgrading the factory jobs, inviting the unions along with management and government to the table. And my dad always told me a great story. He worked in Victory Optical in Newark, New Jersey in the ironbound section. He said he got that job in 1934 when he was 13. It was a terrible job. It took 9 people, his dad, his mom, 6 siblings, to make a family wage. He came back from his service in World War II, and as if by magic, he had a good job. We made manufacturing, we forget that. We made manufacturing jobs good jobs. So we have to start, and that's what the conversation we're having with Comptroller Stringer and a whole group of other people is about. How do we take these bad jobs and make them good jobs? First off, what you said, we've got to get the minimum wage up. Our rubric is 50 to 60% of the local median wage, which I think is about 15+ bucks an hour. So a little higher than most people, because our costs are higher here. Second thing, we've got to make a concerted effort, and the Comptroller and I are talking about this Emerging Businesses Council. We've got to get together the leading companies that want to treat these workers better, that want to give them a career track, working their way up. They might start at minimum wage, but go up through the ladder. And thirdly, we've got to expand our technology and creative economy for everyone. And here's the rub. Yes, we are attracting the great technology companies. Yes, we're building a base in digital media. But when you think of what media and computing are doing, artists, graphic designers, musicians, indie artists, hip-hop artists, they're going to be successful. It's not just by playing instruments anymore. It's by understanding digital technology. And by expanding computer science and technology in our schools, we can strengthen and upgrade those.
But this is where the tension that I'm curious about comes from. In your earlier works, you talked about this is in some ways a competition, that New York, like other cities, were competing with Hong Kong and Singapore and everywhere else to try and attract creative artists and workers workers and so forth and build an infrastructure and ecology for them. To the extent that you try to sort of upgrade some of these less well-paying jobs, doesn't that make the city less competitive? Aren't those jobs necessarily going to go somewhere else?
I don't think so. I think New York has secured itself as the world's most important city. I mean, it's sort of daunting. We've bypassed Hong Kong. We've bypassed London. We've bypassed Paris. I think we are the world's economic. You know, it's interesting to think about that. The world's most, not just the U.S. most economic. The gap between us and others have grown, and I think we have the resources to upgrade the bottom. But it's going to take effort. You know, where the mayor is talking about affordable housing, we got to get that done. You know, housing prices are pricing out not just the lower class, the middle class, and we've got to upgrade those bottom jobs. And you know, fortunately, our economy is strong enough. We'd like it to be stronger, but it's strong enough that we can afford it. And I think New York owes the world an obligation as the world's economically most powerful city to chart that path, not just creating an economy for the super rich, but an economy, we call it an inclusive, creative economy that raises the boats of everyone.
Do you have any qualms about the government placing bets on particular sectors? I mean, it's really hard to sort of know where the next innovation or the next opportunity is going to come from.
No, I don't think government should place bets on particular sectors. I think it should upgrade its talent base, invest in its schools, invest in open space, invest in transit, invest in housing, and invest in a broad-based effort to lift the bottom. But I think it's a mistake. We can't know. I mean, if you would have asked 10 years ago, some people would have said finance, insurance, real estate. New York could never compete in technology. Right. Yet with the digital media disruption, here we are today. I think we can cast a broad net. And what I believe, operating by upgrading the talent base, by investing in people, not just high-skilled people, professors and technology, investing in everyone, and increasing quality of place, strengthening our parks, our transit, our transportation, our schools. Those are the things that make our whole city better. And I think New York City can be a model for the world.
Well, and see, there again, I mean, when you do that, and I've seen this in my neighborhood, a bunch of other neighborhoods, the minute you do that, you get those amenities, you get the bike paths, and you get the better transit and so forth. Well, rents are going to go up right behind that, right? Because everybody's going to want to be there.
And none of us could have anticipated this so-called re-urbanization, the move back. You know, when we were kids, people were moving to the burbs. Companies were moving to the burbs. New York City was I was a boy, was in a fiscal crisis. It was in shambles. None of us, even a decade ago, could have anticipated this shift back of investment of people, of the world, not just locals, of the world, coming back to the city. So now we've got to think about, just like we made, you know, the suburbs were the place, like it or not, for the middle-class family. We invested in schools there, we invested in highways, we invested in transit infrastructure, and not every American, but a large number of Americans could get a piece of the action. Now we have to do that, but for our cities. So, and one of the advantages we have is our transit system. Even though the city itself is expensive, you can live on a transit node, and a middle-class person can still afford to live here in comparison to a place like San Francisco, where everybody's priced out. But we've got to do more of it. We've got to make a new compact to create a middle class and an inclusive city for everyone by upgrading this re-urban movement.
Okay, a prosperous, inclusive city, just what everybody wants to hear about. Thanks so much for spending some time with us.
Thanks, and we're doing it.
All right.